I'll be taking you through chapters 18 to 22. And so let's dive into the Word and see what's there. Starting in chapter 18, verse 1, the first 8 verses are all about the Levites, about God making them a special portion to himself out of the children of Israel who were already special. So in many ways, it might be the same type of thing during the millennium where we are called to be a special people. We are going to be oh, the sound's slow. How's the sound now? Okay. My dad speaks really loud, so I don't think I can maintain that type of volume. But anyways, yes, just like the Levites and the priests, we will have a certain similar role in the kingdom. We will be kingly priests. We will be serving and teaching and doing all sorts of things we do not know yet what will our responsibilities will be. So let's start. The priests, the Levites, all the tribe of Levi shall have no part nor inheritance with Israel. They shall eat the offerings of the Lord, made by fire, and his portion. Therefore they shall have no inheritance among their brethren. The Lord is their inheritance, as he said to them. So they're special. The Lord is their inheritance. Much like the Lord is our inheritance as well. And this shall be the priest's due from the people. From those who offer a sacrifice, whether it is a bull or sheep, they shall give it to the priest. The shoulder, it's a nice cut. The cheeks and the stomach, I guess maybe the Scots and their haggis were onto something. The first fruits of your grain and your new wine and your oil, and the first of the fleece of your sheep, you shall give him. For the Lord your God has chosen him out of your tribes to stand to minister in the name of the Lord, him and his sons forever. So if a Levite comes from any of your gates, from where he dwells among all Israel, and comes with all desire of his mind to choose the place which the Lord chooses, then he may serve in the name of the Lord his God, as all his brethren the Levites do, who stand there before the Lord. So this sounds like if they want to go and minister, then they have the right to do so, being a Levite. But it also indicates that they have to. So they're still Levites, so they don't have to go and leave everything, but they can, which is essentially the point. So if they want the responsibility, it's their right. Then he shall serve in the name of the brethren of his Lord, as all his brethren the Levites do, who stand there before the Lord. They shall have equal portions to eat, besides what comes from the sale of his inheritance. So he had to give up what he had before. He had to leave his earthly possessions, essentially. Similar way we are going to have to. And that essentially concludes Deuteronomy 18's talking about the Levites. And we start going on to a whole bunch of customs and rules and judgments that God was setting the people apart from the rest of the nations around them. Okay, verse 9. When you come into the land which the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominations of those nations. That's basically the point of Deuteronomy. You know, the nations were getting kicked out of the promised land because of the abominations, and he didn't want them to just adopt the same ones because God would have to do the same to them. So, verse 10, there shall not be among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, or anyone who practices witchcraft, or a soothsayer, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritualist, or one who calls upon the dead. For all who do those things are an abomination to the Lord, and because of these abominations, the Lord your God drives them out from before you. That's the point. He wanted to make them separate, different. He did not want them to just become like all the other nations around them. And in order to do that, they were going to have to live very different lives. For these nations which you will dispossess listened to soothsayers and diviners, but as for you, the Lord your God has not appointed such for you. God wasn't a spiritualist. He wasn't a magician. So he is a very different way than the rest of the peoples. Verse 15, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brethren, him you shall hear. According to all you desire of the Lord your God in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, nor let me see this great fire anymore, lest I die. God was going to raise up a lot of different prophets through, the future history as they were in Israel. But of course, this is also seen as a messianic verse right here, so pointing towards the great prophet. And the Lord said to me, what they have spoken is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you among their brethren, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. I guess God was saying that it was probably good that he wasn't having to look on the Israelites, because he probably would wipe them out. And so God could speak to Moses. God could speak through a prophet, but the people had already tested God a lot. And God knew, their nature was going to be a rebellious one, and it would follow along through the generations. So, God didn't want to put himself in the same position of being tempted to wipe them out, because he had promised Moses he wouldn't. And it shall be that whoever will not hear my words, which he speaks in my name, I will require it of him. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded to him, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. When it says, it shall be that whoever will not hear my words, which he speaks in my name, I will require it of him. There's a chapter and a verse later in Scriptures that I thought was fitting. It tied into it. So, Matthew 11 and verse 23. Matthew 11, verse 23. Yes. Well, we can start with 22. But I say to you, it will be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon in the day of judgment than for you. And you, Capernaum, who was exalted to heaven, will be brought down to Hades. For if the mighty works which were done in you had been done in Sodom, it would have remained until this day. So God's, in the latter verses of the Bible, God is warning that those who were given revelation, they had a responsibility and they were expected to turn. And, some of the foreign nations would have turned. If they had been given the revelation, if they had been called and chosen, they would have turned. And so there was a warning here. And it shall be that whoever will not hear my words, which he speaks in my name, I will require it of him. And if you say in your heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not happen or come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken, the prophet has spoken it presumptuously, you shall not be afraid. Yes, when all these doomsday preachers out there, they make a date, they tell you something's going to happen, and they're forced to recant time after time, it's probably good to stop listening to them. Yeah, the first time. If they've done it once, they've already proven themselves to be speaking presumptuously out of their own mind. Let's go to chapter 19, verse 1. So right now we're going to talk about the cities of refuge, which has an interesting concept about the innocence and how there was a radically different type of treatment of life. God was going to require a lot different approach to the treatment of an innocent life. It was such a valuable thing that compared to modern society, our society would essentially fail completely if they tried to do God's laws right now, because it's so corrupt. The corruption is so deep that them not doing it, the punishment has already been kind of stored up. But let's start. Verse 1, chapter 19. When the Lord your God has cut off the nations whose land the Lord your God is giving you, and you dispossess them and dwell in their cities and in their houses, you shall separate 3 cities for yourself in the midst of your land, which the Lord your God is bringing to you to possess. You shall prepare roads for yourself and divide into 3 parts of the territory of your land, which the Lord your God is giving you to inherit, that any manslayer may flee there. And this is the case of the manslayer who flees there, that he may live. Whoever kills his neighbor unintentionally, not having hated him in the past. Let's just highlight that, not having hated them in the past. It crops up a bunch of times. As when a man goes to the woods with his neighbor to cut timber, and his hand swings a stroke with the axe to cut down a tree, and the head slips from the handle and strikes his neighbor so that he dies, he shall flee to one of these cities and live. Lest the avenger of blood, while his anger is hot, pursue the manslayer and overtake him, because the way is long, and kill him. Though he was not deserving of death, since he had not hated the victim in the past. Let's just skip to 1 John 2. There's an important point here that the latter chapters of the Bible and books of the Bible deal with. 1 John 2 and verse 4. We can start with 3. Now by this we know that we know him if we keep his commandments. It's always good scripture to start with. He who says, I know him, and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps his word, truly the love of God is perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. I think I meant to go a couple verses later. We'll just continue. He who says he abides in him ought himself to walk just as he walked. Brethren, I write no new commandment to you, but an old commandment, which you have had from the beginning. So this is, it's starting to reference one of the foundational commandments that God gave his people. The old commandment is the word which you heard from the beginning. Again, a new commandment I write to you, which thing is true in him and in you, because the darkness is passing away and the true light is already shining. He who says he is in the light and hates his brother is in darkness until now. He who loves his brother abides in the light, and there is no cause for stumbling in him. But he who hates his brother is in darkness and walks in darkness and does not know where he is going, because the darkness has blinded him. So hating your brother. If we tie that into the avenger of blood and into the manslayer, the key part was since he had not hated the victim in the past. So if he had, it was a different case. It was an accident. And, who would have known? You could not know. He was guilty already in his heart of murder. So he was a manslayer, but he had hated his brother. He was guilty. So whether he did it intentionally or by accident, in his heart he had murder. So verse 7 in chapter 19. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall separate 3 cities for yourself. Now if the Lord your God enlarges your territory, as he swore to your fathers, and gives you the land which he promised to give your fathers. So this didn't happen. They did not take all the land that they were promised at that time. And if you keep all these commandments and do them, which I command you today, to love the Lord your God and to walk always in his ways, then you shall add 3 more cities for yourself besides these. So they're supposed to essentially double their territory, which God expected them to take. Lest innocent blood be shed in the midst of your land, which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and thus guilt of bloodshed be upon you. So manslayer, without intentionally killing someone, no hate in his heart, he was innocent. He had innocent blood, and if they didn't have this system set up and the right of the avenger of blood to basically vindicate the fact that they had lost a brother, then and they let an innocent man get killed because of this, then it was going to come on the land. There was going to be a price to pay. But if anyone who hates his neighbor lies in wait for him, rises against him, and strikes him mortally so that he dies, and he flees to one of these cities, then the elders of his city shall send and bring him from there, and deliver him over to the hand of the avenger of blood, that he may die. Your eye shall not pity him, but you shall put away the guilt of innocent blood from Israel, that it may go well with you. Innocent blood. It's one of these important concepts. And it was tied to the land. So it was not just with the individuals who were involved in the murder or the slaying, the accident. Verse 14. You shall not remove your neighbor's landmark. So we're just totally switching gears right here, away from the cities of refuge and onto a couple statutes.
Property law.
Yeah, property law. You shall not remove your neighbor's landmark, which the men of old have set in your inheritance, which you will inherit it in the land that your Lord, your God, is giving you to possess. So, no cheating. No enlarging your land by sleight of hand. One witness, verse 15, shall not rise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses the matter shall be established. We've talked about this earlier, because it's an important piece. But the next verses are telling. If a false witness rises against any man to testify against him of wrongdoing, then both men in the controversy shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges who serve in those days. And the judges shall make careful inquiry. It doesn't say inquiry, so it's a very important thing. A very careful inquiry. And indeed, if the witness is a false witness who has testified falsely against his brother, then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. And I think this is part of the thing that comes down to a misunderstanding of one of the most famous scriptures. We'll just read a little farther to it. So you shall put away the evil from among you, and those who remain shall hear and fear, and hereafter they shall not again commit such evil among you. Your eye shall not pity, life shall be for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. That's quoted a lot in terms of what the Old Testament's all about. It's about exacting an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. If we look at the context, what's it talking about? It's talking about false witnesses. If a false witness, wanted, he was trying to exact something from his enemy, essentially. So he was hating his brother. He was going out there, and he was falsely accusing, and he wanted something done to that person. And when he wanted something done to that person and was caught, it was going to come back on him. So it was justice. It was the man falling into his own trap type of concept. It was not, oh, this man stole, so we're going to steal from him, cut off his hand. It was a very different type of thing. It's not this man injured him, and so, okay, he accidentally cut off some fingers, when they were cutting wood. They didn't cut off his fingers. No, this was talking about false witnesses. This is talking about justice. Of course, if you wanted to have someone get killed, that was risky business if you're a false witness. So we wouldn't have the same system. We wouldn't have the lawyers and the professional liars, essentially. Let's go to chapter 20, verse 1. Principles governing warfare, making them different than the rest of the nations around. When you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them. For the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. So that prefaces all the laws governing warfare. First thing is the whole point of all the laws were so that they would trust in God and not be afraid of the people around, no matter their numbers. So it shall be, when you are on the verge of battle, that the priest shall approach and speak to the people, and he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are on the verge of battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint. Do not be afraid. Do not tremble or be terrified because of them. However many there are. Do not be afraid was the biggest message to start all of this. For the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. So this was about the fact that God was promising to be there, and if they did not fear, if they were faithful, God was going to be right there with them, fighting their battles for them. Then the officers shall speak to the people, saying, What man is there who has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in battle, and another man dedicate it. And what man is there who has planted a vineyard and has not eaten of it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in battle, and another man eat of it. And what man is there who is betrothed to a woman and has not married her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in battle, and another man marry her. And the officer shall speak further to the people, and say, What man is there who is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go and return to his house, lest the heart of his brethren faint like his heart. That was the case of Gideon. Gideon enacted this law right here. And the point was, there were a lot of reasons for this. Part of it harkens back to the fact that God wanted them to have faith. God didn't want them to count on numbers. And that was one of the important things. So God didn't care about the numbers. He wanted, whoever was of a strong heart. So he was about quality. He was looking for quality and making sure that those who hadn't enjoyed life had the chance to do it. Verse 9. And so it shall be when the officers have finished speaking to the people, that they shall make captains of the armies to lead the people. When you go near a city to fight against it, then proclaim an offer of peace to it. And it shall be that if they accept your offer of peace and open to you, then all the people who are found in it shall be placed under tribute to you and serve you. Let's just jump to Joshua. Joshua 9 and verse 3. Talking about the Gibeonites, the classic example of the Gibeonites. Chapter 9, verse 3. But when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard that Joshua had journeyed to Jericho and Ai, they worked craftily and went and pretended to be ambassadors, and they took old sacks on their donkeys, old wineskins torn and mended, old and patched sandals on their feet. So they're they were being devious and trying to disguise what they really were. And they went to Joshua, in verse 6, to the camp at Gilgal and said to him and the men of Israel, "We have come from a far country. Now, therefore, make us a covenant with us." They were not from a far country. Then the people of Israel said to the Hivites, "Perhaps you shall..." Yes, Hivites, "Perhaps you shall dwell among us. So how can we make a covenant with you?" But they said to Joshua, "We are your servants." So somehow they had heard what was being said in Deuteronomy. They were saying that they wanted peace. They would be their servants. They'd heard. So they had spies in Israel, something. They had mixed, had gone in, had heard the words. And so they knew that the Israelites had something that they were required to follow. And Joshua said to them, "Who are you and where do you come from?" So they said to him, "From a very far country." And I think it goes on a little bit like this. But the point is that they did succeed in deceiving Joshua and the people. And so they did make a promise. And later on, they were obligated to keep it. So, in Joshua 10, they went and they rescued the Gibeonites. So they made a covenant under the treaties and laws of their God, and so they were required to go and protect their protectorate. And of course, later on, when Saul actually did go and wipe out the Gibeonites, and he broke, obviously this is not the first command he broke of God's, but in 2 Samuel 2, and I think is verse 21, or verse 1 to 9, the story of Saul, basically breaking the covenant that they'd made with the Gibeonites, and there was a big cost. Basically all of Saul's family was also murdered in response to that. Killed justice in God's eyes because they had broken a sovereign covenant. And it was avenged. Saul's family paid a dear price for doing that. Let's see. Chapter 9, 20 and verse 11. "And it shall be that if they accept your offer of peace and open to you, then all the people who are found in it shall be placed under tribute to you and serve you." So the Gibeonites knew what was happening. They were skilled. "Now if the city will not make peace with you, but makes war against you, you shall besiege it. And when the Lord your God delivers it into your hands, you shall strike every male on it with the edge of the sword." So here's a war tactic. You're going to instill fear into the people in order to pressure them to not fight, to pressure them to just give up, surrender, and be a protectorate, to give tribute, a vassal city, essentially, because it's essentially city-states. "But if the women, the little ones, the livestock, and all that is in the city, all its spoil you shall plunder for yourself, and you shall eat the enemy's plunder which the Lord your God gives you." So it's just the men that die in these cases. When it wasn't commanded specifically that they should all be wiped out, it's just the men. And of course, the men made all the decisions in these societies. So, it was the men that you had to demoralize. "Thus you shall do to all the cities which are very far from you, which are not the cities of these nations. But of the cities of these which the people your God gives you as an inheritance, you shall let nothing that breathes remain alive." So God had made a judgment because of all the abominations. Everything within the land that he had promised, all these tribes and nations and peoples that had built up such abominations for 400 years, essentially since Abraham was promised They've been given 400 years to stop doing it, but of course they just got worse. So for those 400 years, they built up sin, and God essentially ordered, a reset, cleansing of the land. Verse 17, but you shall utterly destroy them, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, just as the Lord your God has commanded you, lest they teach you to do according to all their abominations which they have done for their gods, and you sin against the Lord your God. The whole point right there. Don't sin against God. They're going to make you sin against God. Please don't follow what they're going to do. They're going to make you sin. Just don't do it. Of course, we know they did. When you besiege a city for a long time, while making war against it to take it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. If you can eat of them, do not cut them down to use in the siege, for the tree of the field is man's food. A little bit of agricultural law within the war, the laws of war. You weren't just supposed to salt the land, burn the olive trees. It was not something you were to do. Only the trees which you know are not trees for food you may destroy and cut down to build siege works against the city that makes war with you until it is subdued. Sounds a little bit like medieval warfare. It might have actually been really similar to old medieval warfare. We just don't have evidences that survive for that long. Wood decays. Now we're coming to chapter 21, and a lot of it's talking about the law of concerning unsolved murder. So we're getting back to the blood of the innocent. One of those key principles in these chapters here. If anyone is found slain, lying in the field in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess, and it is not known who killed him, then your elders, your judges, shall go out and measure the distance from the slain man to the surrounding cities. And it shall be that the elders of the city nearest to the slain man will take a heifer which has not been worked and which has not pulled a yoke. So it's a prize heifer, actually. And the elders of the city shall bring the heifer down to a valley with flowing water, which is neither plowed nor sown, and they shall break the heifer's neck there in the valley. They're going to make it common. The people can't eat it. It's a complete waste, essentially. Then the priests and the sons of Levi shall come near, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister to him, and to bless in the name of the Lord by their word. Every controversy and every assault shall be settled. So a little bit of a mention of both the priests and the Levites and their role in the community. So they were to make judgments. They were to weigh a matter and settle every controversy, and every assault shall be settled. No cold cases. No open cases. And all the elders of the city nearest to the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley. They shall answer and say, our hand has not shed this blood, nor have our eyes seen it. Provide atonement, O Lord, for your people, whom you have redeemed, and do not lay innocent blood to the charge of your people Israel. An atonement shall be provided on their behalf for the blood. Atonement. And so innocent blood and atonement. And of course, the heifer, it was completely unworked. It was essentially what they would consider an innocent animal, an unblemished, perfect animal. It had never been damaged in work, frolicked in the fields. So you shall put away the guilt of innocent blood from among you when you do what is right in the sight of the Lord. So innocent blood had a cost. That'd be like every time someone murdered, you'd be throwing an expensive truck down off a cliff or something, a complete waste. And so if you consider how many murders happen in North America, that would be an economic devastation. There would be an impetus to actually solve things and to actually execute justice if the general society, there was a cost to it. Verse 10. Verse 10 to 14. When you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and desire her, and would take her for your wife, then you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head and trim her nails. She shall put off the clothes of her captivity, remain in your house, and mourn her father and her mother a full month. After that you may go in to her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And it shall be, if you have no delight in her, then you shall set her free, but you certainly shall not sell her for money. You have not treated her brutally, because you have humbled her. You shall not treat her brutally. So, no chattel slavery. You conquer people. You take them into servitude, but there were laws, and you couldn't just do what you wanted, because they're still human. Verse 15. If a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and they bore him children, both the loved and the unloved, and if the firstborn son is of her who is unloved, then it shall be on the day that he bequeaths his possessions to his sons, that he must not bestow firstborn status on the son of the loved wife in preference to the son of the unloved, the true firstborn. But he shall acknowledge the son of the unloved wife as the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has, for he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. It's talking about fairness. You shouldn't have preference over your children. One of those common things, because it leads to a lot of issues. Like all the patriarchs, and they had issues because of multiple wives. And children who contested against each other. Verse 18. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who, when they have chastened him, will not heed them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out of the elders of the city to the gate of his city, and they shall say to the elders of the city, this son of ours is stubborn. I haven't done the word study. I think it's a little bit more than stubborn. It's not our modern English word of, he's a stubborn-headed mule. It's a stronger thing. He is and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. So I'm sure there's a study in here somewhere about what all these, the character of the person, what it will lead to. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall put away the evil from among you. So evil, I think there's some more to the actual words here, because it was considered evil, and all Israel shall hear and fear. 22. If a man has committed a sin deserving of death, and he is put to death, and you hang him on a tree, and his body shall not remain overnight on the tree, but you shall surely bury him that day. What did they do to Christ? They didn't leave him on the cross, a tree. They actually took him down and buried him that same day, hastening to do it, of course, before the holy day came upon them. But you shall surely bury him that day, so that you do not defile the land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, for he who is hanged is accursed of God. And of course, that's what they were trying to do. The Pharisees, the religious leaders of Christ's time, were essentially trying to curse him. They wanted him to hang on the cross, on a tree. So they were trying to do the worst they could possibly do. They're trying to curse him, make him accursed of God. Because, of course, they saw that they they were farther from God than he was, and he was the point of their jealousy. He was the whole focus. So, he who is hanged is accursed of God. You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray and hide yourself from them. This is chapter 22. You shall certainly bring them back to your brother. Common courtesy is starting to be actually commanded. So maybe it's not common courtesy. Maybe this is godly courtesy. And if your brother is not near you, or if you do not know him, then you shall bring it to your house, and it shall remain with you until your brother seeks it. Then you shall restore it to him. You shall do the same with his donkey, so you shall do with his garment. With any lost thing of your brother's which he has lost and you have found, you shall do likewise. You must not hide yourself. So no coveting. If you find something in the street, you weren't to just, bless luck and take it. You were supposed to hold on to it. Of course, if your brother never came, it became yours. But otherwise, you had to be honest. There was no coveting. There was no lying. There was no cheating. You must not hide yourself. You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fall along the road and hide yourself from them. You shall surely help them. So this is not common courtesy. This is godly courtesy. Obviously, the old world, the ancient world, had a lot less of this. It wasn't as civilized. It didn't have the same influence from the scriptures that our modern Western society has. Some of these ideas trickled down. And I think in the ancient world, they didn't have the same ideas of common courtesy. So it was different. This was a very different type of command. You shall surely help him lift them up again. Now, a woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all those who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God. Enough said. If a bird's nest happens to be before you along the way, I find this interesting. It's these scriptures. There's very varied, right, one next to another, and very, extremely different concepts. But this actually comes down all to, this goes kind of with common courtesy, just common courtesy to an animal. If a bird nest happens to be before you along the way, if any tree or on the ground with young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. You shall surely let the mother go, and take the young for yourself, that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days. What's this sound like? This is an environmental thing, but it also sounds like honoring father and mother, the same blessing. You're not going to take the mother of the chicks or the eggs. You're going to leave them and let the mother, create more. So it's environmental, but it's an interesting blessing. So I guess the opposite. If you do go and you destroy nature, you destroy the mothers that will reproduce and keep the environment healthy and clean and working and all these things, then it will not be well with you, and you will not prolong your days. Is that one of the problems we're having in our modern cultures, where we reap and pillage the land, and then habitat, and we have bad controls on how we take care of our fish and our wildlife and all these things. If you took this into a larger context, it would be more of a sustainable treatment of the environment, of nature, of animals. When you build a new house, then you shall make a parapet for your roof, a guardrail, and you shall not bring guilt of bloodshed on your house if anyone falls from it. So, innocent blood, safety safety standards, design standards, how you design things for the safety of the population, of the users of a device or of a location. You shall not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seed, lest the yield of the seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. So I guess this is about agricultural standards, making sure that you have strong varieties and don't dilute them. Obviously, I think they'd been farming grapes for thousands of years already. It's one of the first things, according to archaeologists and other things. Wine was one of the first commercial products. It's attributed to maybe even making people stop from being hunter-gatherers because they needed to stay in one place to make wine. And it's actually that it could be that important in terms of the development of society and moving into cities. It was wine production. They were winos since the beginning of humanity. Once it was discovered, or once God taught them. We don't know exactly how that came about. You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together. You shall not wear. What, do they not get along? So they hate each other. There's some common sense being written into Scripture, so that you don't have to find out yourself and have issues. You shall not wear a garment of different sorts, such as wool and linen mixed together. Classically, it makes the garment a lot weaker. Wool and linen makes a bad product. Destroys it. Yeah. So it destroys both of the qualities of the cotton and of the linen. Some of these basic things. You shall make tassels on your four corners of your clothing, which you cover yourself. It's supposed to be an outward reminder for those who, the people of the land. They were very hard-hearted, hard-headed, and God wanted something on their clothing just to remind them of His laws. My opinion is that, when we're given the Spirit, the laws instilled within, and you shouldn't have to, when you're baptized to the Spirit, you shouldn't have to have an outward reminder, a little tassel on your clothing to remind you of some of the basic laws, because, as Jeremiah said, it will be written in your heart. Of course, I think Christ had them because He was doing everything to the T. So there could be no fault. No one could blame Him or accuse Him of anything. So He did everything to the T. Anyways, verse 13. If any man takes a wife and goes to her and detests her and charges her with shameful conduct and brings a bad name on her, says, I took this woman, and when I found out I found she was not a virgin. When the father or the mother of the young one shall take and bring the evidence of the young woman's virginity to the elders of the city of the gate, and the young woman's father shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as wife, and he detests her. Now he has charged her with shameful conduct, saying, I found your daughter was not a virgin, and yet these are the evidences of my father's virginity. Daughters, and they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. So one of these traditional customs in order to stop thief cheats. Then the elders of the city shall take that man and punish him. And they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver and give them to the father of the young one, because he has brought a bad name on the Virgin of Israel, and she shall be his wife. He cannot divorce her all his days. And so he was stuck, and she could nag him as much as she wanted.
Not a good start.
Not a good start. So if he was ever going to have peace in this life, he was going to have to make amends somehow.
100 shekels of silver.
Oh yeah, 100 shekels of silver would have put him in the poorhouse, given it to the father of the bride, and therefore the bride would have had security if she asked her father. So the man was now destitute, and really, for being so dishonest and a scumbag, he was going to have to pay. in more than one way. Verse 20. But if the thing is true, and evidence of virginity are not found in the young woman, then they shall bring out the young woman to the house of her father, to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done a disgraceful thing in Israel, to play the harlot of her father's house. You shall put away the evil from among you. So, harsh standards. The sex before marriage and then trying to sell yourself off as something else was consequences. If a man is found lying with a woman married to a husband, then both of them shall die. The man that lay with the woman and the woman, so you shall put away the evil from among Israel. Different than Islam, where generally the woman just dies. Here, it's equal opportunity guilt. If a young woman who is a virgin is betrothed to a husband, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the city gate, and you shall stone them to death with stones, the young woman, because she did not cry out in the city. Obviously, cities were very tightly packed at that time, a lot more so than now. They would have houses upon houses, and so every square inch would have been pretty much had people within earshot. Because she did not cry out in the city, and the man because he humbled his neighbor's wife, so you shall put away the evil among you. But if a man finds a betrothed woman in the countryside, and a man forces her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. So, this wasn't cheating wife. This was innocence. No Ashley Madison accounts here. For he found her in the countryside, and the betrothed woman cried out, but there was no one to save her. So it was a travesty, and the man would pay with his life for doing it. If a man finds a young woman who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, and he seizes her and lies with her, and there's this kind of qualifying thing, and they are found out. So this doesn't sound like a normal rape case. This sounds like just two people going out there and consensually doing something. Yes. Then the man who lay with her shall give to the young woman's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has humbled her. He shall not be permitted to divorce her all his days. So in the heat of the moment, they go and do something. They are known to each other. And then, guess what? Couldn't divorce her. And there's a financial penalty too. So there's a proper way to do something in polite society. Yes. And a man shall not take his father's wife, nor uncover his father's bed, obviously. And that is the conclusion of chapter 22.